What's up, everyone? Welcome to Level 7. It is time for another episode of the Agents of Fandom podcast. I'm your host, TJ Zwarich. And after a week where my review of the Acolyte episode 7 randomly just started popping on Facebook with angry people calling me a Disney shill, I am happy to report I like the finale even more than episode 7. Joining me, as he has throughout multiple episodes of the podcast for the Acolyte so far, Damon Gray, co-host of the Comic Corner Pod. How you doing, Damon?
You say randomly as if this is a big surprise that a large or just a portion of the internet is very upset with you for being very high on this show, TJ.
It really felt to me like, I don't know, like I made it, like I've seen so many friends around the industry just write some great pieces that get absolutely flamed by just idiots. And so the fact that mine made it to the idiots made me feel like I did something with this one. And I was proud. Joining us as well, we have a Star Wars expert joining us for the second time on the podcast. First time to cover the Bad Batch, and now for the finale of the Acolyte. Catrina Dennis, how are you doing today?
Good. I am excited to be here, and and I'm really excited to talk about that finale because, oh my goodness, it much like that episode of the Bad Batch that I was on for, it really gave me everything I wanted, and I'm so excited to talk about it.
One of the things that we talked about when we were covering episode 7 was how there just seems like so much to wrap up. I don't know if they're going to be able to stick the landing. Not like they really stuck the landing. I was impressed with episode 7, episode 8. But before we dive into things, it's another edition of Whatcha Watching, because we like to, make sure we're covering so many things for work. We're watching so many things, reading so many things. It's nice to dive into something other than the main show that we're talking about. So, Damon, I'll start with you. Throwing in, of course, what you've been reading, so you get to plug some comic books. What you've been watching?
I haven't been watching anything on the television or movie side. Honestly, God, I've just been dead on that, which is unfortunate because there's a lot of good stuff out right now, and I'm like an episode or two behind on My Adventures Superman, which I've been loving, and I'm an episode or two behind on The Boys, which I've been enjoying this season, not as much as previous seasons, but I've been enjoying it. On the comic book side, we have had so many good books that came out over the last couple weeks. Nightwing, again, one of my favorite superhero books of all time right now. This Tom Taylor run is fantastic. This new X-Men run, this Ultimate X-Men run in particular, has been very fun, a very big swing. I've been enjoying that as well. Something is Killing the Children, all this other great stuff that's been coming out. Been absolutely loving it. It's been great.
My Adventures with Superman Season 2 finale comes out this weekend. I've gotten a chance to see it already. I can say it is fantastic. Spoiler free, of course. How can I describe it? I'll say the resolution was maybe slightly disappointing for me, but like just how the resolution comes to be. But and that I can't even elaborate on that why yet. But anyways, we'll get into it. It was really cool. The highs were far better than the lows. And it was a really good episode to conclude a wonderful season of television. I am got 20 minutes left in this finale of The Boys as well. I didn't quite get to finish the episode before we had to record the podcast, but that's what I've been going through on my own time. And then my wife and I just kind of randomly, not planned, but it's just been on in the background as we've done other things over the past few days, just the Pirates of the Caribbean marathon. So we just finished out all of those. Catrina, how about you? What you been watching?
Yeah, it's really funny that you brought up My Adventures with Superman because I have also been watching that and loving it. I love it when people just get and I feel like the writers of this show really get him. They get who he is. They don't go to these great lengths to like change him or make him edgier or anything for today's audiences or whatever. He is the honest Superman that we really need. And I really enjoy this interpretation of Clark Kent. I come from an immigrant family, and so Clark Kent has always meant a lot to myself and my dad. And we've always kind of seen ourselves in him. And I love the exploration they're doing with his identity and how he's dealing about learning who he is and where he came from, and then just the way that his relationship with Lois is being handled, I think, is like amazing. Like the drama that's there is drama that is necessary for both of them to advance as characters and people. It's not just like, oh, drama for drama, you know. And of course I love Cara Zell-El and her Android 18 outfit when she was introduced, and her little like kill outfit that she has now. Like I am delighted with this whole series, and I am really excited for the finale. And then my partner agreed to start watching Bridgerton recently, and he is a history buff. So I'm getting him through Queen Charlotte first because that is the one with the most characters, people from history. Not exactly, none of these things are accurate, but I'm just like, oh, you know who this guy is, right? And you know his whole deal. Okay, good. This is the story about like him and Queen Charlotte and all that. And that's going really well. I mean, like it is my favorite of the Bridgerton seasons so far, and it just like it's again another interesting look at a relationship under pressure. I think so yeah. Outside of the Acolyte, that's been what I've been watching. I have been reading the I just started The Rise and Fall of the Galactic Empire by Chris Kempschel, which just came out like last week. And so far, just amazing. I love the concept of in-world history, like things that are immersive, things that bring you into the world and make you feel like you're reading from a writer. And the way he's put this story together is so cool and cohesive. Like there are little like citation notes at the bottom, and it's very like from an in-world perspective, as though you were reading the history of the Galactic Empire from a history book, which I think is really cool. So I'm really excited to get deeper into that book. And yeah, I just chilling.
I love it. I'm going on a mini soapbox before we transition to our next little segment that I added in today, because I want people to know my qualms aren't just with Disney Plus. It's everywhere. And that with Bridgerton is another one of these perfect ones. I watch a season and I'm like, damn, I love this season. When can I get this next season of television? It's probably gonna be 2028 before we get the next season of Bridgerton of some kind. Cobra Kai releases 4 or 5 episodes, whatever it is, on Netflix today, on Thursday, as we record this. The second half is coming out in November. What is the deal with this? And we'll get into the Disney Plus stuff as well. So many of these shows, I love the characters. I love how they are written, and formatting, release schedules, and formatting messes things up for me a little bit here. And so we'll get into that a little bit further. But before we do so, I don't want to forget, because this popped up on my Twitter timeline today. And since we were talking about my adventures with Superman, since we touched on The Boys a little bit, Jack Quaid very much killing it lately. Shout out to Jack Quaid. He obviously is Clark Kent in My Adventures with Superman. He had an interview where he said, like, I did throw in an audition for Superman and James Gunn DCU. I put one video out, didn't really go very far. And now I've seen a bunch of internet fan casts coming in that go, give us Jack Quaid as Barry Allen. He is a perfect Barry Allen. So Damon, I'll throw that to you first. What do you think about Jack Quaid as Barry Allen?
Oh man, that's a question I would love to have an answer. That's an answer for AF, who's my co-host, one of my co-hosts on the Comic Corner podcast, who is the biggest Flash fan, Wally West particularly. But yeah, that would be fine. Honestly, I think that would be a solid cast. I don't know if I would immediately go Barry Allen for him. I would need to kind of like sit back and think about a solid list of maybe some more niche characters that I think Jack Quaid could like almost like perfectly nail. But Barry Allen's not a bad first option.
Catrina, what do you think?
I think it'd be great. I mean, like, I'm down for Jack Quaid in anything. He seems like a delightful guy, and every role he has been in, he's brought it in. I like love. I mean, like, you guys know, I'm a huge Star Trek fan, and so like Lower Decks, the appearance in Strange New Worlds, like just been killing it left and right. And so yeah, I'm down for him as like a, I would say more of a Wally West than a Barry Allen. I feel he just has, I forgot how old Jack Quaid is, but he has a very youthful air to him. And he's good at playing someone who doesn't really know what they are doing coming in, but quickly learns because they care about what they're doing. So like Jack Quaid is good at playing characters who give a crap, you know. So yeah, definitely.
I like it. I don't mind it either. And before we dive into the Acolyte, make sure you follow the Agents of Fandom on socials at Agents Fandom on TikTok and Twitter, Agents of Fandom everywhere else. And then, of course, if you're watching us on YouTube, like, subscribe, hit the notification bell, and make sure you subscribe to the Agents of Fandom wherever you get your podcasts, because we got not one, not two, but 3 shows dropping every week between the Agents of Fandom pod, the Comic Corner podcast, and the Council of Fire, breaking down each and every episode of House of the Dragon when it drops Sunday night. You can find those on your feeds every Monday. Catrina, before we get into diving into the finale, what have you thought of the season as a whole? How excited were you going in? Did it meet your expectations?
Yeah, I was very excited going in because I love the High Republic. I was super hyped for a High Republic story to be introduced to like the greater audience. We've had obviously the books, the comics, Young Jedi Adventures, which is a delightful series. And so it was nice to kind of go in and go like, all right, this is a great happy medium between what the High Republic is and what casual Star Wars fans know. And it's also a great series, I think, to like pull brand new Star Wars fans into, because like really all you need to know are the basics. Like, here are the Jedi, they do this. Here are the Sith, they do that. Blah, get in there. But yeah, I mean, my criticisms of the Acolyte aren't dependent on the show's story itself. I think all of those episodes could have been way longer. And I think this kind of attributes to what you were saying earlier about TV and streaming and all of this stuff. I think those episodes really needed some more time to breathe. I would have loved to spend more time with those characters, and also I think that what my hope is for the High Republic, now that we've had a taste of what the Jedi were back then, is that we can roll it back 200 years and go back to the Jedi at their peak, when they weren't like galactic protectors as much as they were explorers, as much as they were people who were going out and finding out what Bacta was so that they could bring it to the galaxy and bring this new healing product out to them. People who were going to, small planets so that they could help, bridge galactic gaps, and all of that with the core worlds. Like, I love that era, especially in like the Light of the Jedi Phase 1 era of like discovery and newness, and the Jedi just kind of playing around and seeing what Moss does. Like, we had a scene where that kind of happened, but more of those Jedi to really show like what we see in the Acolyte is where the Jedi start going like downward, where things start kind of falling apart for them, and we see how they get from point A to point B when it comes to where the Acolyte is and where they are in the Phantom Menace. And that's great and cool, and I think a very needed story. But I want my Phase 1 like TV show. I want my Phase 1 movie where like we really see where the Jedi are at their peak, like not even where they begin, but like where they are, where who they are meant to be, so that's those are my only real criticisms with the show. And then of course the episode length. I was talking with my partner about this because, like I said, we're big Star Trek fans, and the thing about early 90s TV, beyond the nostalgia, was that budget did not that it was okay to be low budget, in the 90s. It was okay to be low budget if you had more episodes. You got 5 seasons, 6 seasons of a show that was like 30 minutes long per episode. And yeah, maybe the walls were made out of like cardboard, but like it was the acting, the characters, the story, all of that immersed you in like what it really was. Because if you go back to like season 1 of Star Trek TNG in '89, like that, they everything was very much the same as it was in the original series, where all the sets were super cheap, the costumes had maybe gotten a little bit more budget, but for the most part, like you could tell that this was a low budget science fiction show, and none of that took away from what it really was. And I know that there's an expectation of like quality, especially when it comes to Disney Plus shows. They're competing with prestige shows on other streaming networks, but like I want TV to have more wiggle room, you know? Like I would have loved to spend more time with all of these characters. And I think that, you know, one of the things that is really great about the Acolyte is that despite all of that, I was still super invested in every single person that we met, simply because the direction was fantastic, the story was fantastic, the actors were amazing. We really won with this cast. And despite the short amount of time that they had to sell who they were and make us really care about them, they went above and beyond and really did that. You know, I'm still in mourning after episode 5. So, yeah.
I couldn't agree more, and I've grown to call it and by grown to call it, I mean I made this up today, and I liked the name, but the Disney Plus dilemma, where it's all of these shows that I think of like outside of Secret Invasion, because that one just sucked. That one just sucked. But each one of these other shows that are 6 to 8 episodes, I find my biggest qualms being I would have liked more time spent with a certain storyline, a certain character. Damon, we talked last week with the Acolyte about how you just felt like you needed more time spent understanding Soul's feelings towards Osha. Why was he so adamant that he needed to take on this person as his first Padawan? Why did he feel such strong feelings towards her? I would have loved to see some stuff about Osha and Yord in the academy together. 6 to 8 episodes, especially when they're only 30 to 45 minutes, is nowhere near enough. Like, to me, it's got to be 22 for 30 minutes, or 13 works if each episode is an hour long.
I wouldn't say 22 is the number you need to hit, but like that higher range. Than that. Yeah, like 16, 18, I think is a reasonable number. You're looking almost like, I know Daredevil for Netflix was an hour-long episode per, and those had crazy. That's almost the exception, but at least like the number count, right? That's what you're more looking at there. Yeah.
Yeah, exactly. And I think the Acolyte would have greatly benefited from this. I think to me, the highs in this show greatly outweigh the lows for me. The biggest low for me was like, I didn't really care about how Osha and May were conceived storyline. Like that didn't really do anything for me, but it probably would have if I got to spend more time with the witches and I saw the process, because I love the magic and that aspect of the world. And so if we got more time with them, I probably would have been a lot more invested in that story. Ms. Marvel is another perfect example of one where it was like, if I just got to see her hanging out with her friends more, getting into shenanigans and learning how to become a superhero, that was just such incredible television. Just hang out with her family for an entire episode where they're just doing stupid stuff because it's great. Bring it back, real television, where we get to see these characters grow over the course of the season. Damon, I know like one of your favorite things ever of all time, the Hawkeye series. Would you agree that series would have been even better with more time to introduce the Kingpin storyline?
So here's essentially the bigger problem, and you really see it in the Obi-Wan show, right? Because what are all these series, these 6-episode series, essentially? It's a movie cut up into 6 different parts, right? That's why some of these just don't work, because the pacing is totally off. And if you watch the show with ads, you could tell it was not made for ads at all, because these ads are just stuck like right in the most random spots. You're like, all right, 90 seconds, we're just going to watch this while something crazy just happened. And it wasn't meant for an ad. But like, that's part of the problem with this, right? And I think they are starting to move away from that. This is just kind of like the end of it, which is good. That's a good thing, right? I think streaming company as a whole are moving away from these are big movies cut up into smaller parts, because Hawkeye was literally that. That was supposed to be a movie. That was designed to be a movie that was then pushed to the streaming service for as a TV show, and you can see that chopped up into pieces. Same thing with maybe, I don't know if Obi-Wan was designed to be a movie, but that very much we've seen cuts of that on YouTube. You've seen cuts of that on YouTube that are a perfect movie. Yeah, you've seen cuts of that on YouTube, and things just flow great, right? I think that is the bigger problem with the 6-episode series, the limited series or whatever, because I mean, I don't know if this inspired you to do it, but I've been putting it in a group chat for months now, right? Like, I joke and say Netflix ruined television because of a binge model, because of how people take in their shows, right? You have two different aspects now. You have your high-end television that Catrina was talking about, which is essentially your Game of Thrones level of budget, where you go all out to make this thing look as best as possible. And now that's the standard, but you're putting that in a TV show format where that's not supposed to be the standard. We're now expecting cinematic level quality in our television shows. There's your problem. There's the problem, right? That's why I think like X-Men 97 works so well. It's an animated show. It was designed to be an animated TV show, and it just flowed great. So I hope when they do more of these, they attack all of these shows as if they are TV shows. I think that's also why She-Hulk, for at least for me, flowed the best, one of the best as the Marvel shows, because you could see that that was more traditional television style that had 9 episodes at least, right? It's
another one too that it's like, I agree with you 100%, but it's another one where it's like, if you give me 3 more episodes where she's just taking super powered cases and getting into shenanigans, like, wow, does that even enhance that even more?
More of that. Like, you know, those little one-off episodes, we see them in comics all the time. Comics traditionally tell 3-issue arcs, and then in between an arc, maybe you'll get kind of like a throwaway issue is what some people call it, but like your tweeners, right? Those are your standalone stories that are fun, that have nothing to do with anything, and those are sometimes the ones that people enjoy the most because it's a one-shot issue and you're like, oh, what a fun little one episode. You kind of go back to rewatch that over and over and over again. And almost the Daredevil episode in that series fits the best like that. So going back to the Acolyte, to bring it all back together, we don't have that in this show, right? There's no, like, you can't just like jump into an episode like, I want to watch episode 4 and go in and be like, okay, what happened in the previous episode? Because it's a continued story. It's not serialized.
Yeah.
Where we do have that, and it works perfectly in those 3 to 4 episode arcs, is in Andor. And I think that's where we see the 12 episode seasons, the longer, and it's was designed for television. It was a 2-season story designed from the get-go. I think it's worked really well with Loki, because when you look at it as a 2-season whole, if you almost view that as just 1 season of television with a mid-season finale, because it came out close enough together, I think that one works really well together. But overall, I think it's got to change to, like you said, Damon, like you said, Catrina, making it for television, spread out the budget for more episodes as opposed to making it all try and be prestige.
Exactly. I don't think that, you know, we're Star Wars fans. We watched a dude run through a hallway with an ice cream maker in his arms once, and we were like, that guy's our favorite guy now. Like, you can lower the budget on us a little bit and lengthen the episodes and add more episodes. And we're not, you know, most of us, the people who don't complain all the time anyway, we're not going to really complain as long as the story's good. And so I think that's really where this series could have used improvement. I wouldn't even say it like suffered. It just could have used a lot of improvement in the either these episodes. You know, if it is prestige TV, give us those 1-hour episodes. If it's a serialized show, then give us more episodes. But something's got to give when it comes to how these shows are made, because I think streaming is really like warped expectations when it comes to the TV that we watch.
Bringing it back to the Acolytes, Damon, you were worried about the finale being stuck, the stories getting tied up together. Do you think they succeeded? What did you think of the finale?
I think the finale was able to at least wrap up the A plot, which is the most important thing with any show from the first season, is to be able to wrap up your A plot that you are telling if you do not know you're getting a second season. They did that. By the end of the season, we got the Acolyte. Even though the title itself was called The Acolyte. Like, we got
That
it.
was so annoying for writing the review this week. I'm like, season 2, episode 8, The Acolyte of The Acolyte. Like, that was so annoying getting it to write in and for SEO purposes.
Mhm.
So I think from that point of view, right, OhCa's first arc is complete, which is good. That's
Yeah.
what, at the very least, we needed, not wanted, we needed to see, and we got it. Now, there are B and C plots that are still very loose out there, and they introduced maybe 3 and 4 other things within this episode as well to be like, maybe go back to this, maybe we won't, we don't know. And then that was like cool, but a little frustrating at the same time, because it's like, I'm interested in this now, and we'll talk about that later, because there's one character in particular, I was like, this is the most fascinating thing that's been brought up in this series, and we got it in the last episode in like a 2-minute monologue. This is so cool, and it's gone. I want more of this. So I've really
And that
liked,
character isn't,
yes.
I feel like, the one that they thought going in that everyone was going to be like, oh wow, they appeared. They dropped some bombs in this episode, but it's
Absolutely.
It's a particular senator that kind of steals the show.
Yeah. So, but just to wrap this up, I really liked that they were they needed and they succeeded in wrapping up the A plot. Yay, we did it.
Yay.
Good job. Because I was worried about that, because there's so many threads in the previous episodes. I was like, what are we wrapping up? We succeeded in that respect.
Catrina, how about you?
Yeah. When it comes to how I feel about the episode overall, I think it gave us so many new elements that are, I don't know. I let me think about how I want to phrase this. New elements that are more on the subtle side, if you are a Star Wars fan and you are a fan of world building and storytelling, that are brand new to this saga, concepts we haven't been able to explore yet, Darksiders that, are so different from usual Sith. I was watching a video earlier, and we'll go into this and Oshamir and Chimere and the Stranger and OhCa later. But one of the things that George Lucas phrased as something that seduces you to the dark side is selfishness, and that is the case for Anakin. That is the case for so many other Darksiders. Is that at the end of the day, they want something for themselves. They want to have revenge. They want to have power. They want to grasp this thing specifically so that they or their emotions or their relationships can benefit. And what we see with OhCa's turn is so different because she is turned by trauma and heartbreak and all of these things that Chimere was trying to, or the Stranger, however, whatever you want to call him, Manny Jacinto was trying to just like seduce her to the dark side with. None of those things worked until this episode, where something else, her heartbreak, her betrayal, this sense of like, I don't even know who I am anymore. This, I think, is like one of the most interesting turns to the dark side, beyond the spectacle of like bleeding the crystal, because none of it has to do with like what OhCa like selfishly wants. It's OhCa is reacting to a horrible betrayal from someone she loved, and that doesn't necessarily mean that her turn to the dark side is Soul's fault. One of the great things about this season and OhCa is that every choice she has made has been her own. She has an astounding amount of agency for a woman in the modern Star Wars era, and so I think that's what made her turn so cool and interesting this episode. And there are just a million other things that I love about the way they wrapped up this finale. And if they don't renew this show for a season 2, I will riot in the streets for. But I completely agree with you, Damon, on the A plot was finally wrapped up. We found out, the A plot was what happened on Brendock and how are these people handling it, and I feel like that was just like wrapped up really well and set away. Now we know like the full story of what was going on there. And there are some things even about Brendock that we are still not sure of. Like, if there's no body, is that person dead when it comes to Mother Coral? Something Leslie has even brought up in interviews is like, maybe she's dead, maybe she's not. Who knows? But I think that main plot being wrapped up was perfect. I love the way the show left itself off. It opened up the opportunity to spend a lot more time, hopefully in season 2, with characters that we didn't get to spend too much time with this season. So yeah, and then Basil Superstar was fantastic. I saw someone joke and they had said like it feels like Basil is just in a completely different show that is happening at the same time as this show. And I like that. I mean, I don't think that's a fault. It's just like he's doing his own thing. He's got his own show going on over there, and it just keeps crossing paths with this show out of his control. So I
That
loved
is
it.
totally something we would get in the Clone Wars, is a full episode that is just Basil's perspective of like almost like an Ice Age style thing where it's like the squirrel is going for the nut the whole time and he just has to get in the way of all of these other characters.
His wife sent him out for Melurons, and now he's here.
Yeah, exactly. One of my favorite parts of this episode was the symbolic nature of how they portrayed OhCa did not make it as a Jedi because she couldn't let go of her hatred for her sister. May couldn't fully ever be tempted to the dark because she couldn't let go of the love she had for her sister. And I thought that part was super, super powerful, especially when I don't care, like the whole, they're not the same, they're not twins, they're not sisters, they're the same person split in two. That didn't land for me as much. And I do think it makes sense, that this specific part, she was missing this from being dark. She was missing this from being light. That makes sense when they were one person. But that part didn't quite fully land for me. I did think this was interesting in hindsight where we get, OhCa's vision when she puts on the helmet at the beginning. And she says, like, I can see May killing Soul without, like, he doesn't have his weapon. And Chimera's like, oh, she's doing it. She's finally completing the mission. And we see at the end, of course, that is OhCa who's doing that. And it makes me look back and wonder, was she seeing May or was she seeing herself completely? Another part, though, that I would have loved to see more of is Chimera's, like, his eyes go black, right? The same thing that happened to Torben. The way he moves was described very similarly to how the witches moved earlier in the series, where it's like, I can feel his presence, but he's not even there. I want to know more about that connection, which again, maybe that comes in the future, but I want to know more about the witches and their powers because the witches are so cool. And whether it's Night Sisters or not, I want to know more about the witches in Star Wars. Soul's inability to admit his fault in the what happened at Brendock to me was very interesting. Like, I understand his perspective of like, I was worried they were doing crazy things. This lady started going into mist, so I stabbed her because I was trying to save you both. My only regret is I couldn't save you. I think I did a good job.
Right.
To me, what it was reminiscent for me of like parents of the baby boomer generation, where you have a conversation with them and it's like, hey, do you remember this thing that happened? That actually kind of fucked me up. I learned about this in therapy and that kind of fucked me up. And they're like, so you think I'm a terrible parent? I never did anything good because I did that thing. That's what it felt like with Soul a little bit of like, man, if you just apologized to her and told her the truth and weren't so caught up in your pride, you probably could have avoided this whole situation. What do you think, Damon?
I think Soul, the whole thing with him is he lied to himself about the situation, and he started doing it for so long at that point, he believed in his lie, right? Which happens to people. You tell yourself a lie to almost get over a trauma, and then you start believing in that lie itself as if it is the truth. So I think for me, looking at that whole situation with him, that's how I see it. you know, I mean, we kind of go back to like the whole soul with Ocean, how I think I brought up last episode how I was like I needed to see like why he like what about her. He said it in this episode. I wish he said it last episode so I would have had a little more context going to it. But hey, I got that at least. He said it. He said why. He's like, oh, because I felt that, you know, you were part of the convergence and like there are two people to one. I was like, all right, cool. I wish you said that last episode. That was like one thing I was just like, oh, I wish I had that extra context now. Or you think you'd say that to like the rest of the Jedi? You think maybe he did, and it was just off camera. But it's like you think he'd like openly be like, these two are one. We need to do something about this. I feel like communication in general would fix a lot of scenarios and just everything, especially in Star Wars, and that probably could have prevented something really bad from happening.
He needed his version of Qui-Gon going to the council and being like, "He is the chosen one." Catrina, what did you think? Was that, to me, maybe it was just me reading into the situation with my own traumas that bothered me with Soul so much that he could admit a little fault there.
Well, I think the thing about guilt is that at the end of the day, you always want to find out. You know, I think the thing at our root of being as people is that we don't want to be the bad guy. You know, especially people like the Jedi. It's like it sucks to think like I was wrong and I was the bad guy in this situation. And the compulsion is always like, well, if I make it right, maybe I don't have to apologize. Maybe I don't have to admit that I was bad, that I did the wrong thing here. And I think that was like Soul's ultimate fault. And there's nothing wrong with a character who tries to do good but has committed a sin. You know, it's a very, I think Soul is one of the most like human and relatable Jedi that we've had in a really long time, specifically because of that. Because there are people who will go through their lives deluding themselves that like, yeah, I did that thing that like harmed you, but like because I'm not a bad person, I shouldn't have to own up to it. You know, because I don't think I'm a bad person, I shouldn't have to say sorry to you or even bring it up again or talk to you about it. And so I think that, you know, this doesn't change my like perspective of love for Soul. Like I think that he's an incredible character. I think the acting on that was one of those characters that like, yes, I only have 30 minutes in this show, but holy cannolis, did that actor like sell this character to me as a dynamic person and nuances. But that's how I see Soul is like he struggles to admit that yes, I was the villain in this story. I was the bad guy. And even though I try to do a million good things over here away from this thing, the one thing I needed to do, I am not willing to do, which was own up to the mistake and admit to OSHA what happened. Because yes, it could have broken her trust and taken her away, and she would have gone away and maybe even been alone for the rest of her life. Yes, that is a risk of what would have happened, but at the end of the day, he would have still told the truth to her. And so that I think, you know, I think that it's important to accept that characters can have faults and can get into situations where they can't fix things. And I know that like a lot of the Soul Patrol out there is hurting and maybe like lashing out or being upset about the fact that Soul is the villain in OSHA's story or a villain in OSHA's story, because there are a few. But it's okay for that to happen. It's fine. It's great and cool that we see a Jedi who actually realizes, unfortunately, at the end of his life, like where he screwed up, where his hubris came to fault for him, and how it affected OSHA negatively. And like in his final moments, like he even tells her, like he knows she's gonna kill him. He's already accepted that, and he still comforts her, and he still says it's okay. You know, like I accept that I did these horrible things to you now. So it's sad and it's heartbreaking and it's tragic, but Star Wars is a tragedy. Like so often it is a tragedy, and I think that, you know, the satisfying part of it was that scene and how that played out. So like it you know, it sucks that our baby girl Soul had to do that, but That's the reality of it.
There's two parts of that I find so interesting is because I've just like literally walked down the stairs to record this episode from being halfway through the finale of The Boys. And there's a character in the finale who admits they are sociopathic and they also have mind reading abilities. And they say, like, the most interesting thing to me about when I read people's minds is that everyone thinks they're the hero in their own story. They found all these ways to convince themselves that the terrible things they do aren't as bad as the terrible things that other people do. I know I'm doing terrible things. Everybody else doesn't seem to realize that. But the interesting part about I kind of find leading into the whole of the hubris, like, I need to convince myself I did nothing wrong, because if I did something wrong, then I'm the villain in this story, is how absolute that is. And it's something you learn in psychology of the importance of not thinking in absolutes, and it's something you learn when learning the Force as well, that only Siths deal in absolutes. And so it's such an important thing to get over when getting over that hubris of realizing, hey, I fucked up and I'm sorry, doesn't necessarily mean I'm forever a bad person and I am irredeemable. And that's a super interesting aspect to their story that I thought. When Sol and May are chasing after each other through the rings of Brendok, I thought that was super cool. This series was lacking a little bit in like cool space sequences. It was amazing in terms of lightsaber sequences, lacked a little bit in terms of the space pew pew flying around, and they nailed it with this one. The part that I didn't get, and Catrina, I'm going to go for you to you for this one, because I know you have an affinity for Basil. What was he doing? Why did he kind of sabotage Sol's ship there?
I think Basil knew that Sol was doing something wild. I think Basil was like, "This is insane. I'm going to stop you from doing this. Like, I'm going to do what I can to like mess this up so that we don't go careening toward this girl and like nobody dies." And you know what? He was right. He was right. People died. So like it's I think that was an attempt, like Basil was like, "Oh my god, I just left my house for Melu runs. Like what is happening? You guys were supposed to pay me like $30 an hour for this. Like I didn't sign up for this. We need to stop right now. Someone's gonna die." So that was my thinking when Basil was trying to sabotage Soul's chase, is that it was like, this is getting out of hand. I need to try and stop this right now. Like it's because he doesn't know May and Osha. Like he doesn't know them. He's a contractor for the Jedi. Like from his perspective, this is far out of his pay range. He does not get health benefits for this. He needed to stop what was happening. So that's why I think Basil tried to sabotage the mission.
And that's why I threw it to you, because that was the absolutely perfect breakdown, and I couldn't have imagined possibly doing it better myself. Damon, the next character that we kind of get introduced in this episode, we're used to assuming when we get like a senator walking into a room, they're like talking angsty and angry against the Jedi. They're coming in with a lot of swagger. They're usually bad guys. They're almost always bad guys. Short of Padme Amidala, they're almost and Bail Organa, they're almost always bad guys. What do we think about Senator Raincourt coming in, calling out the Jedi, saying they need some oversight, making some damn good points?
Damn politician made up some damn good points, man, because that's what I was talking about earlier. This is one of the most fascinating elements of this entire series so far, is how this guy comes in at the last episode and just honestly says facts, because he's not wrong. He's really not wrong. And by the end of this episode, you see and are proven that he kind of has a point to be made. And it's more just like a balance of power in the end, because the Jedi do have a lot of power in the High Republic. They're at the peak of their power, as it says right there, right? So they do need to have some checks in there, because in the end, some things are going to get covered up that may possibly should have been revealed to the other people in the room.
It's so interesting looking at it from the perspective of the Clone Wars and how much corruption was in the Senate, and wanting to go, why would you want to let these people get involved? You got to keep them out. Like, you can't trust them, you can't trust these politicians. But then you see how at the end of this story, how it was resolved. And at that point, it was Palpatine and Chancellor and all of his influence that had all of the power. At this point of the story, it is the Jedi that have all the power.
Because the whole, as you said, like the problem is, like, why is there one group who has all that power, right? That's where things go terribly, terribly wrong. So if in anything, right, no matter what, no matter how good the Jedi's intentions are, and they try to put things under wraps because they think that will be for the better of the galaxy, the better of the Republic, as if nobody knows about any of this and we just keep the peace, right? Why is it them? Why does it have to be just them to make that decision? Because when it's just one group making a decision, bad things happen. Honestly, like in the end, maybe one good thing happens and a second good thing happens. The longer it goes, eventually something bad will happen.
And it doesn't matter how many good ones there are in a corrupt system. It's when you have the system of absolute power, it's not gonna work out very well. And the end result we kind of see here is almost like the cops did an internal investigation on the other cops, found out this one was bad, but all the other ones, it's fine. We're just gonna keep going on about our jobs as normal. What did you think about that whole situation, Catrina?
I mean, I think that unchecked power is always a bad thing, but it was also as right as that senator was. That line of thinking is what led to the Jedi being involved in the Clone Wars. That line of thinking is what led to the Jedi being militarized. I have decided that these superpowered monks are too dangerous to not, have some kind of check system on them. And so eventually that's how it kind of falls apart. So I don't know. I mean, I don't think I've been able to reach a conclusion on what would have been the right move there. Because I mean, we don't like there are of course religious factions out here right now that are now involved in government, now involved in making decisions about how we live our lives, and that hasn't worked out great in our country or several other countries out there where religion is what guides how people live. But yeah, I you get where he's coming from, because it's like, geez, these guys are dangerous. There's some sus stuff going on under there. We should make sure we watch them and make sure they're not like doing anything wrong. But welcoming the Jedi into like this religious faction into government, is it's not, it never works out. like that's why here in the US it's like the concept of separation of church and state was introduced, because it was like, that doesn't seem like a good idea, you guys. Like I feel like something wrong is gonna happen there. But it didn't really, we didn't keep those checks and balances. So
it's so beautifully written, because it's kind of like this guy's solution is saying, hey, let's bring in the government oversight. Let's combine the church and state. You have all this power, you need oversight. When in reality, their current situation is very similar to how the United States is, where it's like, we're not part of the government, we're a religion, but as this religion, we're going to influence all of these laws, and we have all of the power. But no, we're not involved. We're not involved. But you actually can't do this. No abortions because our God says so. That kind of thing. That's essentially what they're doing now. The issue isn't that they need people watching them and they need to be part of the government. The issue is they shouldn't be the ones only controlling who is allowed to use the Force, or as the senator says to them, they shouldn't be pretending that they have full control over their emotions at all time, which is a really good point as well. But another reveal, another big character, more of a cameo. He only appeared for a couple seconds. Darth Plagueis is here, Damon. Darth Plagueis is here.
He's here.
Did you know that was him right off the bat? Did you know it was him right off the bat? And
so
did you care?
So I think we both messaged each other. It was like, was that Plagueis? And I'm like, I think so. Like, I've never actually like seen, because he's never been shown in official canon.
I googled Plagueis and Tenebris and went, that's got to be Plagueis and not Tenebris.
Yeah, like they never officially showed him in canon, so it's like they theoretically could have taken any direction they wanted to visually with Plagueis, and it's like, yeah, I wasn't going to go for like creepy cave monster, but sure. That's what we're going with.
Catrina, what did you think of his big reveal? And I thought your tweet was hilarious. Let me tell you the story of Darth. Have you ever heard the story of Darth Plagueis the Voyeur? Because what is he doing? Just sitting there watching the skinny dipping and all of it.
Exactly. It's like what? How? Like I have to wonder if Chimere is hiding the fact that he knows Plagueis is there, or if he like just doesn't know, and Plagueis is like, here, I just sensed like two super strong dark side users. I should go keep an eye on them, and like, oops, now I'm like watching them make out and stuff. Like, yeah. I mean, his reveal was interesting because I guess I didn't see very well like what the character looked like, and like at first I was like, is that like a Kalish, like because the eyes are sunken, and I thought there was a mask.
I thought maybe it was an coral at the end of it. Like that was my first thought before I realized it was probably Plagueis.
Yeah. Once I got that better look at him, I was like, okay, yeah, it's Plagueis. But Leslie Adlin has been upfront with us from the start. She is an EU girly. She loves the Old Republic. She loves those books, Darth Plagueis, all of that. And so I am not only not surprised, I am enthused at like how much of her fandom she has brought into this show. Like I think earlier this week there was an article circulating that said like Jord Vandar is one of her old like RPG characters that that was like one of her OCs, and she brought him to canon, but she used to play him in the Star Trek RPG, which I thought was amazing and immaculate. So I love that like Leslie got to be that person to bring this huge character from the EU into canon again, and I trust her with that character completely. So I don't know why he's lurking. I think hopefully he just got there and didn't just like sit there and watch Chimere skinny dip for like weeks and weeks. But who knows? You know, he could just be hanging about, ready to sit in that additional chair in the hotel room and see what happens.
He's just ready to like as he sees at the very end those two hold hands. I could just imagine he's like looking around, he's like, now do it.
Do it. Yeah, I think
that Chimere learned desire as a tool to sway people to the dark side.
Exactly. I am excited to see what happens with that line, because it's I going back to the point where up until now most of the Sith we've seen have been guided by selfish reasons, and OhCa is like a difference to that. I wonder how that's going to work out with Plagueis and the Stranger and OhCa, because I don't know that Plagueis is like in a position where he can manipulate that to the point where she like fully succumbs and becomes his apprentice and like, you know, kills Chimere or something like that. Like I just have this feeling that whatever happens between the three of them, it's not going to go the way Plagueis wants it to go, and that's how Plagueis is eventually going to pick up Palpatine and be like, okay, now you're my apprentice. And I have several theories on like how that dynamic is going to work out. So because Palpatine's going to be born in like 50 years, so
he's coming.
We're not far.
And Chimere is old. We don't know how old, but we know he's old. He's been around. So like there's more to that story that I'm very excited to find out about. That like feel free to both of you interrupt and interject, touch on it at any point. But there were so many just cool action parts throughout this entire episode with the I saw somebody making like trying to say it as making fun of it on Twitter, but they were like, what in the crouching tiger hidden dragon is this, when they do the slow motion stuff? And it's like, well, that was actually really fucking cool. What in the crouching tiger hidden dragon is this? That's awesome. Like, just adjust the tone of that question, and I agree with you because this is so cool. Both Solo and Chimere, they seem like perfectly evenly matched in their fights. May and OhCa, evenly matched, aside from the fact that May is holding back a little bit because she doesn't want to hurt her, and she sees in this fight the darkness just rising in OhCa. And I thought it was so interesting that May's seeing this darkness rise, and it's just like just like not judging her, just like, this is interesting. Look at you go, girl. And just like May said in that moment, I support women's rights and women's wrongs. And then, of course, we get to the point of Soul admitting he killed their mother, Osha hearing it, she force chokes him, she fully turns to the dark side, and the light and the kyber crystal bleeding in live action was one of, I'm so happy we got to see that. I will say that like I haven't gotten a chance to read everything Leslie Headland has put out in some interviews recently, because just on our friend Maggie Lovett at Collider's show alone, like she dropped 10,000 words on it today. It takes a while to read, but is it's some incredible information. And it's one of the reasons why I want to see Leslie Headland get a show with more episodes, like give her some type of animated show season where they can fully dive into lore, because she knows her lore and she loves it and she wants to get into it. And I think that would be so exciting to see in a Clone Wars style show where it's just like extended seasons, extended episodes, and animated, so you don't have to worry about what you can and can't do. Because I think like last week, our guest, Dave Gonzalez, author of MCU, The Reign of Marvel Studios, he brought up a great point, because he was saying like for him personally, he's enjoying like reading about the Acolyte and talking about the Acolyte more than actually watching it, because there's so many cool ideas. But one of the things is it brings it back to the Disney Plus format, is like not enough time exploring these ideas. And so if you haven't checked those articles with Leslie Headland, interviews with Leslie Headland out, I know Collider and Maggie just dropped one today. Make sure you check them out, because there is so much invaluable and what's the word I'm looking for? Just entertaining information on it. Damon, I feel like you were going to say something, and then I didn't let you because I went on a tangent. The lightsaber bleeding, the kyber crystal bleeding.
Man, that's just something so many of us have just wanted to see in live action for so long. We got it, we did get it in the Jedi Survivor game, that came out. We got it there, but like it's something different.
When Dagan Gera does his
yeah, there's something different about it in live action too, and I thought they did it so well, because it was like grief that really set this off. And people, I don't know, those who are getting mad about it, whatever, because they're like, oh, it's within the lightsabers. Like, you can clearly see the kyber crystal sticking out and her hand on the kyber crystal. That's like, there you go. That's how this is happening, everybody. Whatever.
Why didn't that happen to Anakin in Revenge of the Sith? Well,
because he wasn't touching the kyber crystal.
And because they fucking needed to be able to give the lightsaber to Luke. That already happened.
Yeah. Well, I think the argument I'll make there, not to interrupt you, I'm sorry, Damon. The argument I'll make there is that he had been given the name Vader, but he was not Vader until Padme was dead. Until he knew Padme was dead, he was not Vader. There was still hope out there that he could come back until he found out that his wife and children were dead. And that, I think, is when, Palpatine was like, all right, let's get you a new lightsaber, bleed it up, let's go. Yeah, I have a lot of theories about like red lightsabers and all of that, like how Asajj Ventress was not, she never bled her lightsabers. Dooku gave her those lightsabers. They were already red. And I think that tells a lot about, here I am. How long are we in? An hour in.
Ventress, bringing it back.
An hour in. I that's a new record, I think. An hour in, and I just mentioned Asajj Ventress. But like, I think that the way lightsaber crystals bleed, especially in this episode, tells a huge contrasting story to how we've seen other Sith get their lightsabers and be given their lightsabers. The Inquisitors are given their lightsabers. They don't really always bleed them. And the only other character who's been able to...
Palpatine's just sitting in the back room,
like,
collecting old Jedi lightsabers, just bleeding all of them in his downtime.
It's like preparing balloons at a kid's party. Just getting them ready for the Inquisitors. But like that's what I think is that, like, the argument to be made about Anakin not bleeding his lightsaber is that there was still and always hope for him to come back until he thought he didn't have anyone left. So that was why when Luke showed up and Luke showed him that hope, he was able to come back to the light side of the Force, or not be on the dark side, basically. But yeah, so
beautiful point. That's exactly what I was going to say. It's they're not having anyone left, because as soon as he does, all of a sudden there's hope again.
Yeah.
As soon as he's got someone left, there's hope again. I'm happy you brought up the Jedi Survivor thing, Damon, because I'm watching this episode just really thinking like Leslie Headland is definitely a fan of these games, because from the dual lightsaber throws from Chimere, Vernestra with the sensing the Force echoes to find out what really happened on Brendok 16 years ago, just like Cal does. The lightsaber bleeding. Definitely a fan of Jedi Survivor, and I dig it because I absolutely love those games as well. Vernestra also admitted that in a brief fleeting sequence, blink and you'll miss it, that she recognizes Chimere's energy. He was her former apprentice, she says later on, and it seems as though those lightsaber whip looking marks on the back of her, on his back, might have came from Vernestra here. Mm-hmm. Damon, how much, and I'll throw this same question to both of you, but Damon, how much of a gap in Vernestra's life is there in between years. The Acolyte and like how interested are you on learning of how she kind of goes from almost rebellious, fun-loving kid to this?
Yeah, I mean, Catrina, am I right? It's about 100 years from like the last we kind of get to now. So, that's a good chunk of time. That's a good chunk of time that is unexplored territory in the High Republic, which is very exciting. I would like to see how she kind of became how she is in the show, because if you see her from her very first appearance where she's happy-go-lucky, yay, big smile on her face and everything, stark difference. But I think age and time changes and hardens a person. And by the end of this episode too, when she goes to a certain someone, it seems like this isn't the first time she's gone to a certain someone and be like, we screwed up.
Little green dad, I screwed up. We'll get to that part.
Dad, how do I hide the fact that there are Sith here? I think that's what you're bringing up here is a really cool point when it comes to Chimere's character, because when he killed everybody in episode 5, you saw this incredibly evil, horrible person, and then as soon as he met OhCa, turned on a dime. Something changed in him. And so going back to Leslie's love for the expanded universe and Knights of the Old Republic, I have this theory that we're going to see a very Revan Bastila kind of path with Chimere and OhCa, in that he is maybe not going to be on the dark side forever. He is maybe, because of his love for OhCa, because you saw him slip so many times this episode and be like, oh my God, is she okay? Oh my God, what's going on? Oh crap, it's my master. I've got to hide from her. These little moments, they're very, very subtle, but they're noticeable enough, because if Chimere was the same dude he was in episode 5, I expected him to jump out and start fighting Vernestra. Right? And he didn't. He hid from her. He was either afraid, or he did not want to face her, or he didn't want her to see him, and then the way he was afraid for OhCa when she was in the mask, and the way that even when he was under that Brendok witch spell, he was afraid for her and he cared for her. I see something happening there with Chimere where he realizes I can't be this ruthless killer if I am to be this person's partner or lover or whatever. And I see him coming back from the dark side and then trying to pull OhCa back as well, like Revan did with Bastila. And I wouldn't put it past Leslie to do that. I would it's not a 1-to-1 Revan Bastila, because if Leslie Headland has her way, we will have the Knights of the Old Republic eventually. But I definitely see that dynamic there.
I mean, it's something we talked about in previous episodes, but they've played the Kylo Ren theme throughout this series, especially at the credits, which is, as we know, a character that bad, good, go back and forth.
Yeah, maybe the whole teasing, is he the original Knight of Ren thing?
Maybe,
really it still might be. There's
maybe,
still could be, but that one already died down.
Maybe hinting more that there is maybe some light in Chimere still, right? There's something that's keeping him back, although clearly he is very good at using the dark side, because you can't see jack in that helmet, and what he's able to do with that thing, that's pretty freaking cool, man.
Yeah, absolutely.
He is the coolest And Darth Maul was cool in a very different way, but I think it's just cool, like, you watch what he does and you're like, oh, damn.
Yeah.
Like, it's the
He's
coolest
more interesting.
It's the coolest bad guy introduction since Maul. When you see him with the spikes for the first time and the dual lightsaber for the first time, and you're like, oh my god, this guy's terrifying. I haven't felt that since Maul, and I got it with Chimera. But
I wonder too. Sorry, go ahead.
No,
Sorry.
you go.
I wonder too if maybe things not working out with Plagueis is what starts the Knights of Ren. If maybe like they, the Knights of Ren was not a Sith faction, it was a dark side faction. That is why Kylo Ren was not really a Sith, or as they were trying to like message back in the sequel era. I remember that, where it was like he's not really a Sith, he's a dark side user who wants to be a Sith really, really bad. And so I wonder too if like maybe the Knights of Ren is, kind of like the Witches of Brendok, where they're a faction of like dark side uses, or like the Night Sisters, they're a faction of dark side users, but they aren't Sith.
Yeah, I couldn't agree more. I want to see, and I know this is why it's like, TJ, read more about the Old Republic, because I know this is explored more. But I do have such interested in light side Force users who aren't Jedi, because I've always been a firm kind of pusher of, there are ways that you don't have to utilize the dark side of the Force, but there are ways to utilize the light side of the Force that the Jedi just don't. And one of the things I find so interesting, this brings up to your point about potentially Chimera and Osha coming back to the light side later, is I think that their whole idea that attachment is the enemy and it leads to the dark side is absolute bullshit. How you handle your pent-up attachment is the reason why it's going poorly for you people. If you guys actually just openly communicate and go to therapy every now and then, instead of just pushing this down so that your fear gets the better of you, love is probably the most powerful light side force that exists. People try to utilize it. And
there's
so
oh, sorry.
No, you go.
There's a discussion going around about who, like, what the ultimate Jedi is, and that's not in like power levels or anything, but who is like the truest to form in Jedi. And I think Lily Neal on Twitter brought up Kanan, and that immediately like set sparks off in my head. And I tweeted this earlier today. Let me pull it up. Kanan didn't break the Jedi code; he cracked it. He allowed himself to love and invest in people, and still made choices that he knew were right despite his trauma. It's no wonder Sabine didn't succeed under Ahsoka. Sabine's first mentor didn't raise her the way the Jedi raised him. And I hold true to that fact. Like, Kanan is an incredible Jedi, but he allows himself to love. And I think that, like, at the end of the day, the rule of attachment was, it is about possession. It is about having unhealthy relationships with people. But the Jedi of the, Republic era that we know in the prequels take that to an extreme where it's like, you're not allowed to invest in love with anybody because that's dangerous. But it's more like, we should have therapists who teach you to have healthy relationships so that you can love people, but you don't like lose your mind if things go wrong or you break up or something happens because you're in a dangerous line of work, and something can happen, like that's, I think that the problem that we're even starting to see now in the Acolyte is everything is taken to an extreme, and no one really knows or can hit that healthy balance that the Jedi talk and preach about so much. But Kanan did. Kanan was in love. He had a family that he cared about. He made friends. He overcame his prejudices against the clones to become allies with them. He did all of these incredible things. And when it was time to sacrifice himself, he chose to, in order to save the people that he loved. And like, that is why I think he's like the ultimate Jedi, because he is cracking the code in that way, and yeah, I'd love to see more of that.
Making sure I timestamp that in my notes app right now to make sure we use that as a clip, because I could not agree more. Absolutely wonderfully well said. One part earlier, Catrina, you brought up how Leslie has been very open about various things like extended universe love, and before the Plagueis conversation, she pulled an Andrew Garfield on one specific thing, though, She said, "Why would I the benefit of being, 100 years in the past is I don't have to use any of the stories in the future. Why would I have to? Why would I make it so that I got to worry about that? I'm in my own little pocket with, I have full control. I'll keep it here." But Damon, right at the end of this episode, we see some gray hairs, and we see a little green head with some ears sticking out.
Oh boy. This one just didn't do it for me, honestly. Like, here's something. I think I messaged you this immediately after. I was just like, this show should have ended with the PLAGUEIS reveal instead. That would have got me way more excited than, there's Yoda. All right, okay. We know he's here. There we go.
Catrina, did the Yoda reveal get you excited? And if we do get a season 2, do you think he's going to be part of it, or maybe just get one scene and that's it?
There are days when I'm a bit of a Yoda anti, not an auntie, an anti. But here's the thing: is that like in the High Republic era, Yoda at his peak is an elementary school principal. Like he works with children. He likes that work. He likes the work he does with kids.
And that's what he's good at. If we're being
yeah,
real.
and that's what he's
like. That's
good
what
at.
he's really
Like,
good at.
exactly. And so, I mean, like that's how you have to think about it when it comes to like where he is and what his position is. His position of importance is in the like prequel Republic era. Like he shouldn't be there. Like an elementary school teacher should be is great at helping foundational minds of children. He's great at crafting this ability in those kids and raising them properly. He is not great about making galactic decisions about people. Like you do not want an elementary school teacher running your military. Like
and not just like a kindergarten teacher too. Like in his heart of hearts, just like the kindergarten teacher, it is a tough job. You have to be a special person to be a kindergarten teacher, to go into that room every day and just like put your heart first and just love these kids despite everything going on. Mm-hmm. That's Yoda.
Yeah.
But that's, again, like not the one you want leading your military.
No, absolutely not. Yeah, I am a teacher's child, and like I love and respect teachers. I think they should be paid $1 billion a day, but not they shouldn't run our military. Like it just doesn't work out. That's not what they're great at. And so like I think it's funny that like, Vernestra goes to her elementary school teacher and is like, "Hey, I need to cover up a murderer. What do I do?" Like he's over there having young Jedi adventures, and out of nowhere it's like people are dead. Oops. Like that's
that
just
whole squadron that was on that planet 16 years ago. Well, everyone involved is dead, and there are multiple dark side users. What do we do?
What do we do?
See this rug we got right here? Let's just put it right underneath there. Right underneath there. Leave it for safekeeping. Hope it doesn't come out to bug us later. Hope it doesn't turn into mold.
Yeah, I mean, I knew that was who she was calling when she was on the comm when Mog came in, and I kind of knew that like, oh, we're gonna have a little bit of Yoda here. But yeah, I mean, therein lies like another domino falling toward the fall of the Jedi. Is like nobody should have called in the kindergarten teacher to make decisions about this. Like it's hard enough to have Ki-Adi-Mundi around. Like he's not even focused on what's going on. He has like a population to rebuild. Like these are not the people that you should have in leadership of the Jedi Order. But yeah, I mean, it's a Yoda. That's cool.
Avar Chris would never let this happen.
Exactly.
I'm happy you brought up Mundi, because there was a moment as I'm watching the episode, Garrett, my former co-host of the podcast and our director of edit content and editorial, he's messaging me, and it was like I think he spelt it right, but in my mind I thought he was I thought it was a typo because I was still in the middle of the Acolyte episode, but he was like, Plagueis is immune, right? Like Muun, like that's his Star Wars species, or however you pronounce it, Mun. But I thought he was saying like, oh, was Plagueis Mundi? Like I thought he thought Mundi was Plagueis, and I was like, what are you saying? What? I'm so confused.
My goodness.
But he was like, no, like the species. And I was like, okay, that makes a lot more sense. One last Acolyte related question I want to ask before we start getting out of here. season 2 left a potential season 2 left teased a lot of different things here. I do think the series will be renewed. Obviously, this is a Disney decision among all else. We know Leslie Headland has planned a story for season 2. The actor who plays Vernestra has already been like, hey, wait for it. Wait, she's not going to be all bad. I promise. She's going to make some good decisions. When could that happen if not a season 2?
Mm-hmm.
Damon, if we get season 2, what to you was the most interesting storyline tease here at the end of this season? What do you want to be the A plot line going into season 2?
Yeah, I mean, I said this on Twitter earlier because I thought about this long and hard. I was like, do I even think this show deserves a season 2? Because I've been a little lower on it than everyone else on the show kind of has been. I was a little more critical, but I still think absolutely, because of all the highs that it gave us, were so great. And usually, traditionally, when a TV show gets a second season, you know, the first season it finds its footing. It learns what it's good at. So in a season 2, it can then double down on what it's good at and learn maybe from its mistakes that it made throughout the way. What I would like to see in season 2, you know, that element with the senator, that was pretty an interesting idea and could lead to where we see things in episode 1. But also, I just want to see more dark side stuff. It's the Acolyte, right? Like, we tease PLAGUEIS. We now have 2 dark side users. I need more of that. Because that's the stuff where I was like, oh, yeah, that's why I'm here for, right? Like, that. And also, the action sequences. I just want more of that, too. Because those kicked so much ass. So, more dark side stuff. Give me some more of the Senator conflict. Because I thought that was an interesting addition. And more lightsaber fights, because that makes me happy.
For me, it's Chimere. I want to know more about him. I want to know more about his path to the Jedi. I want to know more about his future with Osha. I want to know more about his potential connection to Plagueis. I think he is one of the most interesting characters especially on the dark side for me, in a long time. My 2 favorite characters at the beginning of the series, as soon as we find out he was in episode 5, I'm sitting here going, wow, Chimere and Jecki, look at this fight. This is so cool. I love both of them. And then bam, Jecki obviously got the stab to the chest and neck. But I still want to know a lot more about Chimere. So that's it for me. How about you, Catrina?
Yeah, I am a certified Kamosha. I'm really excited about where that relationship is going. It's you know me again, Ventress. I'm very much an OB Ventress type person. I do love the enemies to lovers idea. Never really been fully explored in Star Wars in a way that I find satisfying and exciting, and even I'll go this far as saying like potential for a healthy relationship based on whatever happens next. You know, I would say right now it's healthy because both of them are like not in good places, but it could eventually, they could help each other grow. They could again like have that Revan Bastila moment where like he comes back and he realizes that he needs to help her do the same, or vice versa, whichever. I hope it's him though, because I don't want that burden to be on her. But yeah, I'm excited for them. I'm excited to spend some time with Vernestra. We didn't get a lot of time with her, obviously, as you mentioned, and now she has May in her care. You know, she needs May to find Chimere, and I'm also excited to see the Chimere Vernestra dynamic, because we know, as you'd said, we know who Vernestra was up until 100 years before this show. And we don't know what has happened to her, how she has changed, what decisions she's made ever since then. And I'm very excited to see how she develops as a character from then till this point. So yeah, I think there's like a lot of potential for characters we only spent like a second with. Like I really hope we see Tassie Lowe again. You know, we saw her once in the first episode, and then Yord wisely left her behind and did not bring his Padawan to the death fight. So she survived. You know, I'd like to see Basil again. I just want to see more scruggly little guys in this show, and there's a bunch of potential for that. So yeah.
Next week on the podcast, it is our Deadpool and Wolverine review. We are less than 1 week out from seeing this in theaters, we will have our guy Ryan Cortero not only at the red carpet snapping some photos of Ryan Reynolds and Hugh Jackman, but he'll be at the Canadian premiere as well, getting to see that one a little bit early. And then Adam and I will be breaking it down next week after we see it on Thursday night. No primer for the Deadpool and Wolverine, just because we don't really have time to mix one in. So I will maybe ask last minute, hint, hint, nudge, nudge. Damon, do you think you and
go
or
read
AF
Deadpool
and
Kills
or
the Marvel
TJ
Universe
and or Fat Thor can give us a little what are the best Deadpool and or Wolverine comics to read leading into the movie? Oh wow, Fat Thor just messaged me at that exact same second. That's fun. Coincidence. But what's coming up on the Comic Corner? I heard you were doing an interview today or yesterday, or something happened and everything.
So much, everything's happening on the Comic Corner. But yes, go read Deadpool Kills the Marvel Universe, because maybe there'll be like some stuff that happens in the movie that may be mentioned from that book. I don't know. It's a really good Deadpool book. All right, Comic Corner stuff. What do we have going on? We have interviews. We have lots of interviews. I just interviewed Corin Howell, who is the writer and artist of Lilith, which if you are looking for a gory, fun, spicy book about a demon lady who's trapped in the human world and is trying to get back home, and she has black cat energy, and then she runs into a human who kind of has like, Labrador Retriever energy, and she kind of wants to kill this human, but at the same time, she's like, oh, this human's kind of fun at the same time. If you like that dynamic, you'll really like this book, because it's genuinely a really good time. Other books we have going on right now, I just reviewed Gerard Way's Paranoid Gardens, which was super fun, and I'm a big Gerard Way fan, so I really enjoyed it. We also have the biggest news of the year in comic books, DC's Absolute Power universe, which is, in quotes, their alternate universe. If you think of Marvel's Ultimate Universe as their alternate universe, this is DC's quote-unquote alternate Ultimate Universe, in a way. But they have this big initiative going on. Me and Fat Thor in the last episode broke it all down. Go check it out. There's so many good stuff coming out in DC, and it's the perfect time. They have this new thing called All In, the perfect time, starting in October, to jump into DC Comics. Everything is new. Everything is ready for you to jump in. Come on in.
Teaser from the teaser about Batman from that universe is he is the size of Bane. Really big Batman in that universe.
He's jacked.
So make sure you're checking out the Comic Corner, as well as Council of Fire, where Fat Thor and Listen 3000 break down each and every episode of House of the Dragon. Make sure you're following the Agents of Fandom on socials, at Agents Fandom on TikTok and Twitter, Agents of Fandom everywhere else. And of course, like, subscribe, hit the notification bell for this video specifically, and make sure you're subscribed to the Agents Fandom wherever you get your podcasts. Catrina, what's coming up on What's Glup, Padre Pascal, and of course, anything else you have going on?
Yeah, so we've got some new episodes coming on the What's Club and Padre Pascal side, as well as the restarting of my Star Wars podcast in the Cantina, which is taking place on my YouTube channel every single Monday. This next Monday will be our Acolyte recap, and I've got some special guests lined up over the next few weeks. So please do come back to that. That is OhCatrina on YouTube. Same thing as right there. You just put youtube.com/@OhCatrina. You'll find my videos. I just put up a brand new one, and I'll be uploading to my channel. I'm real close to 1,000 followers, so if you liked me and my Kanan opinions, please do follow. But most importantly, the thing that I am doing this weekend is the Acolytes for Equality fundraiser marathon with the Geeky Waffle. If you go to my Twitter account, which again, same name is right here, OhCatrina, you'll be able to find the link for that. Acolytes for Equality is raising money for Equality Now, which is one of Amanda Stender's favorite organizations. We have already raised $2,000 toward this effort, and we're going to be holding a charity marathon from 5:30 p.m. Eastern to, I think, 10 p.m. Eastern. So nice chunky marathon for you to tune into and check out what we're doing there. Some of your favorite podcasters will be part of it, and some of the raffle prizes that we are giving away are like wild. And they're you only need to donate a little bit to get invested in that. So please do join us. Let's knock that goal out of the park and show them how much Star Wars fans care about taking care of each other and this world.
Love it. I got it up on the screen here for those watching us on YouTube. And as you can see, organized on GoFundMe here by Candace Kaw. We got Catrina, we got Candace, we got Arzu. So many of our wonderful podcast friends and guests behind this one. So make sure you check out Acolytes for Equality if you can. Throw in a donation there as well. Thank you so much for joining us today. This has been an absolute blast.
Thanks for having me. It was so much fun.
Of course, anytime. Definitely. I mean, if there's ever a non-Star Wars show we're covering, feel free to join as well. But each time we have a Star Wars show, I'll definitely be firing you a message. So at the latest, Skeleton Crew.
oh, absolutely. Call me back for Agatha all along too. I will be there.
Ooh, deal. Absolutely, I can do that. And that actually might be the next week-to-week television show we cover. We might be filling some time before that with movies and other things. So thank you so much, everyone, for joining us this week. Like I said, we will be back next week talking Deadpool and Wolverine. On behalf of myself, Damon, our wonderful guest, Catrina, we'll see you next time. Peace.